So, Paul, we're back here again.
Yep, answering questions in the days leading up to the holidays.
Well, in your last newsletter, I put in a question asking anybody if they had questions. I had some interesting questions. You mind if I ask you one?
Sure, go ahead.
Excellent. So, here we go. Which of your characters are your favorite and why?
Wow, there are so many. There are different characters I like for different reasons. When I'm writing the Power Ascending series, I have the group dynamic kind of thing. So I have, on the one hand, in the Temple books, I have Charlene and Danica.
Yes.
And then in the Warrior books, I have the dynamic between Ludwig and then Siggy and
Sin and Siggy.
And Sin and Ziggy, yeah. I guess Sin always has to go first. It just sounds better.
And were they originally supposed to be in the whole series?
No, they were actually they were just going to appear in Warrior Knight originally, and then I had such fun writing them that I couldn't really let them go, so I kept them in the storyline, and then they made it into Warrior Lord, and they continue on in the rest of the series as well.
And what about Heir to the Crown? Do you have a favorite character or two in that?
Heir to the Crown, I have a lot of favorites. Gerald is always fun to write. And he's at a point in his career where he's pretty much seen and done everything. So in the last book, for example, he ends up getting into a sword fight, and to him it's nothing because he's done that his whole life.
I believe he says, will they ever learn?
Yes.
Why won't they ever learn?
Yeah, but he has a bit of a grumpy side, and he doesn't suffer fools gladly. And then there's always, it's always fun writing Albreda.
Sassy.
Albreda is, I guess you could call her sassy. She has a sharp tongue, I guess you'd say.
Yes.
But she's very straightforward and very loyal to the people that she trusts as well.
And any others?
Yeah, I mean, I have fun with some. It's more about the dynamics between individuals.
Like Haley and Revy?
Haley and Revy is a fun one to write. And also there's some fun banter between Aubrey and Beverly, who, of course, are cousins.
Cousin, yeah.
She calls Beverly Cuz all the time. But Haley interacts with them a fair bit too, right?
Yeah, because she calls her Bev.
Yeah. So there's that level of sort of intimacy that you don't get from the other characters. They're more like a big family.
And what about Asha? Because Frozen Flame. That's kind of a unique situation there.
So Frozen Flame is interesting because the two characters were NPCs in another campaign that has very little to do with the story they're in now.
So when you say campaign, can you elucidate upon that to give
Yeah,
people
so before, I've mentioned previously that Heir to the Crown was based on a role-playing game, but prior to that, I had another role-playing game based in a similar world. The idea here was that we had a princess, or she wasn't actually a princess, she was the daughter of a Graf, or the equivalent of a baron.
Yeah, and also she was an NPC, so she wasn't a player.
Yes, she was an NPC, and then the player characters worked around that, and they sort of help her out and find out her father's been kidnapped, and there's a whole campaign based around it.
Yes,
I
remember that.
His name was Ludwig.
Yes.
Yes, and actually the NPC that starts the characters on their journey was an ex-Templar
named Margaret,
who became Charlene with a lot of changes, of course. So that was sort of the impetus for that.
How did you come up with the name Charlene?
Well, that was your doing.
Yes.
We were playing with all kinds of different ideas. I couldn't use Margaret because I'd already used Margaret as
sister and heir to the crown.
The crown. And we tried a bunch of other names, but Charlene to me sounded reminiscent of Charlemagne, so it was kind of an ideal name. So it has that just enough sort of historicity to it to make it interesting.
And I find it interesting. I used to, when you had the name as Margaret, I could never imagine anything else. And now that you've taken on the name Charlene, I could never. It just fits.
Yeah. And it was an invented name. Like I don't think there's been anyone called Charlene as far as I'm aware. At least I Googled it. I couldn't find it.
I know. I might have Googled it before I suggested it.
That worked out well.
So back to Ashes.
Yes.
Favorite characters. Sorry, I keep saying Ashes. Frozen Flame. Favorite characters in Frozen Flame.
One part I love about writing that is the relationship between Athgar and Natalia is playful, but it's also very loyal. It's they know that they can rely on each other regardless of what happens. But I also have a lot of fun playing, in the earlier books especially, there's a lot of interaction between Laruk and Shiluk, who are brother and sister. They're twins.
Orcs,
Laruk came out like seconds
Minutes.
before.
So he's the eldest.
He's the eldest by seconds. He was pulled out first.
Yeah.
And now that the story has progressed, we've got Agar,
Yeah.
who's the son of Kargan and Shluk. He's an orc.
Yes. And Oswin.
Oswin, who
Yes.
is the daughter of Athgar and Natalia.
Yeah.
And there's some fun interaction between her and Agar as well. So that's fun to write.
Well, I actually have another question off that. Some of the comments people have said that the relationship between Athgar and Natalia doesn't seem realistic because they don't fight and they get along so well. What do you have to say to that?
Bearing in mind it's a fantasy story,
Yes.
no one wants to hear minor complaints or arguments in a
Yeah.
story, but there's no major... One thing I don't enjoy in a story is melodrama for the sake of melodrama.
So, like, overhearing something and then someone reacting to that.
Yeah,
Yes.
one of the tropes I try hard to avoid is the, oh, I misunderstood what you said,
Yes.
and or I'm not a big fan of love triangles.
Yes.
There's a sort of a triangle, having said that, in Heart of the Crown, but
Yes.
not a real true triangle.
No,
It's,
no, 'cause
there's more to it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not just mistaken, somebody doesn't see something and mistake what they see.
Yeah,
It's very more of a natural setting, I think.
So what's your favorite character in the Frozen Flame?
I don't know if I could say I have one particular favorite. I think my favorite varies depending on which book I'm writing at the time. Like in the last one, in Vortex, I had a lot of fun with Athgar because Athgar learns a bunch of new magic and then
I
he gets to
remember
use
that,
it.
yeah.
But the next one really will be focusing more on Natalia. The next one's called Torrent. I won't
Yes.
give away.
Have you
what happens.
outlined that one yet?
Yep, that one's all outlined, broken down into chapters.
I had somebody mention on one of your TikToks that they had gotten up to 6 and they were looking forward to 7, and then I noticed your comment on there saying, yes, I'm looking forward to it too. I haven't written it yet. So
Yep. It's fully outlined, so I know exactly what's going to happen in the storyline. I mean, I'll add details as I go.
And that's
like I
your next
usually
book
do.
after Temple Commander, correct?
Yes, so I should be starting that after the holidays.